This issue begins with Desolation. New York City and possibly the world has been lost to Ultron. Amid this horrific landscape, we see Hawkeye dutifully tracking a young girl. He follows her to the hideout of Hammerhead and the Owl, who have captured one of the surviving Avengers. Hawkeye shoots his way through their goons to rescue SpiderMan. As the duo attempt to escape, a deafening sound alerts them to the presence of Ultron sentries. As the Owl futilely reasons with Ultron reminding him of their deal, Hawkeye and Spider-Man manage to make it out of the building before the sentries level it. Hawkeye leads Spider-Man back to the Avengers' hideout amongst the ruins. The remaining Avengers begrudgingly allow both of them inside only once Iron Man has screened them for Ultron's presence. The situation is dire. The Avengers are afraid, broken, and seemingly without a plan. Captain America, their leader, looks physically and emotionally withered. The obvious question on my mind is, how did it come to this?
So we're not entirely sure how it came to this, yet at least. This issue really didn't focus on Ultron at all, which is my biggest criticism of it so far. It's much more about Hawkeye and, kind of the remnants of the Avengers.
It's a 10-issue storyline, so the first issue seems to be really just about setting up the setting.
But how can you set up how can you have a setup without the villain, You're only getting one side.
I think the villain is right there in the title, Age of Ultron. Everyone, you know who Ultron is, and then this is what he did. And Bendis has actually talked about Ultron, sort of hinted at this storyline, especially in his Avengers run.
Yeah, I had actually heard that this Age of Ultron series was supposed to actually occur 2 years ago. Bendis had written it by then.
He's been thinking about it a long time, needless to say. And Ultron actually came back into our world in Avengers issue 12.1. In that issue, we see Spider-Woman going off on her own, and she's accosted by the Intelligentsia, who inadvertently bring back Ultron. And the Avengers show up. Thor and Ultron have a little bit of a showdown, but Ultron says, "No, I'm out. I don't want to do this right now." And so I guess he's ready to come back now.
But going back even further in the first story arc of the Avengers,
we had the storyline at the beginning of the Heroic Age where the new team of Avengers has to deal with problems with Kang and the future timeline, and it really centered around the Ultron War. And you see a really cool timeline in the first arc. This timeline is hand-drawn by future Tony Stark, and you have the young Tony Stark and Tony Stark looking at this, and it's got some really cool Easter eggs on here.
It all kind of ties together with what he's been writing in general. Also on there is Hope returning. He was the one who created Hope in the first place.
I think one of the most interesting ones is the Yesterday X-Men, and since this timeline was back in 2010, it really shows how long the idea of all-new X-Men has been around.
And that Bendis knew he'd be doing that as well.
Exactly. And you see that right after the Yesterday X-Men, the Ultron War begins. And off to the right of that, there's just huge nothingness, a question mark. And that's where, in this story arc, time was sort of imploding on itself. We really left to wonder how this story is going to play out versus the Ultron War that was depicted.
I don't know. I think Age of Ultron could be a way for the Marvel Universe to reset itself, so we'll have to wait and see.
So we'll really have to see how this Ultron War plays out differently. I don't think Ultron's going to win, but we'll see.
So as you said, this is the start of a 10-issue event, all written by Brian Michael Bendis. What are kind of your first impressions?
I think he did a good job setting up the Desolation, but it was kind of a slow issue.
I personally would have liked to see more of Ultron in the first issue, since he's the big bad, and we see the rest of the Avengers enough as it is. But one thing I did like about this first issue was actually the cover. I think we have one around here.
Yeah, right here. It's really glossy. Really sticks out from all the other comics out there on the shelf.
Yeah, if I wasn't going to get this already, I probably would have.
Just by how unique the cover looks?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sticks out.
There's a lot of comics I'll buy just because, wow, that's a cool cover.
Yeah.
So the real central character of this issue was Hawkeye. He kind of raided some supervillain / outlaw den to rescue Spider-Man. Kind of demonstrated his skill set. What'd you think of him?
It was just the standard Hawkeye. Hawkeye seems to be getting popular by the day.
Yeah, it would really try to make him seem like a badass, which I've never really thought he was. But I think more importantly than him, just fighting bad guys, was the fact that all the other Avengers seem to have given up hope or they're not willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good anymore. But Hawkeye still is. He's the only one who still will.
Yeah, everyone seems to be on edge, and Hawkeye is sort of going outside of their little safety net to go rescue. And they were obviously very angry that he left. And so...
Well, I think that just shows how dire the situation is.
Definitely. And I think one of the most interesting things about Hawkeye leaving is that Captain America sort of groomed him to take over Secret Avengers in the previous Secret Avengers volume, and how he's sort of like a leader. And so, you know, Hawkeye's sort of stepping into that role more and more as like the leader of everyone. Captain America's sort of sitting there, his shield is broken, sort of mopey. Hawkeye's going out there and doing things.
So maybe this is another chance for Hawkeye to step up and be the leader.
And he's obviously saving Spider-Man, and I think it's pretty interesting that Spider-Man wasn't with the Avengers to begin with.
My interpretation of the Spider-Man in this, and assuming Bendis did write this a couple years ago, is he didn't fully incorporate the whole idea behind Superior Spider-Man.
That's true.
So this might still be more of a Peter Parker. Though I don't think it was like a Doc Ock Spider-Man, because I think he would have been a much meaner guy if he had been captured.
I think so too, but we don't know how much in the future this is.
So maybe Peter actually did get his body back by then.
But speaking of difference in character, we also see Emma Frost in this, and she seems to have some amount of control. It's not really completely identified how much control she has, but she seems to have control over telepathic powers, which isn't the case right now.
And she's lost that in Bendis' Uncanny X-Men.
Exactly. So once again, maybe it's just the issue of time, or maybe it's the issue of Bendis writing this ages ago. Well, time will tell.
Another interesting thing I thought was some of the characters he featured are also characters he's written in the past. Like Luke Cage stands out the most to me, since Luke Cage is in nothing in Marvel now. But he seems to have a somewhat central role.
That's true. We also see Susan Storm pop up, and we also have She-Hulk. So you got portions of all of the Marvel major titles.
You gotta have all the Marvel Universe in there.
In 12.1, I mentioned that the last thing Ultron did was fight Thor, and then he's like, no, I'm out of here. But in this issue, they say Thor's nowhere to be seen anymore. He's left.
Yeah, so I would imagine if Ultron was going to come back, one of the first major threats you'd have to neutralize is Thor, since he's kind of the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
But it could also just be that he went to Asgard or something.
Asgard is left.
Yeah.
Left, forsaken this world.
The Hulk is another one he'd need to take down. But, you know, Ultron probably prepared for that sort of thing.
So maybe everyone that's left is people that Ultron has deemed not to be that important.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at some of the other people who aren't there, Reed Richards isn't around. T'Challa's not around. Those are kind of the two smartest people.
Mm-hmm.
Beast is still there. Stark is still there. I guess they're smart. But so this is a grade for Age of Ultron Book 1. What would you give it?
I'd give it a solid 3.5 out of 5. Like I said, set up the setting very well and gets me really excited for what's to come.
I disagree. I'm going to give it a 2.5. I didn't feel like it set up very well. Where was Ultron? That was the thing that just bugged me the most. So 2.5 out of 5.
It just makes you want... It makes you anticipate Ultron more that he's not there. And you see all the havoc he's wrecked.
Agree to disagree.
So thanks for watching B3 Comics review of Age of Ultron Book 1. But before we go, we have a question for you guys.
If you guys were Ultron and wanted to take over Earth, which of the Marvel heroes would you have to neutralize first?
Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up.
Bye.